Yeah, thank you so much, Greg. And indeed, we are getting to it because we're going to talk a lot about what's going to happen today. We are also now joined by Brooke and David. And David, I'm going to start with you because I want to know the history of the project. It's a project that's been going on for a while. Obviously, we saw it most recently at TI8, but talk to me about the project and the history of it.
Yeah, so we started this project about 2 years ago in early 2017. We first worked on 1v1 Dota as a way to get started and just get off the ground. In that TI 2017, we were able to beat the top pros at 1v1 Dota. Then we spent a while getting ready for 5v5, and we started training OpenAI 5 in June 2018. By August 2018, we played some tournaments and went to TI. At TI, Pain Gaming beat us and was, OpenAI was not yet ready to play it at better than pro level. It played pretty well. We were pretty happy with how it went. And now it's been 8 months since then. Here we are, OpenAI 5 has learned, has grown, has learned some new stuff, figured out new strategies, and we're excited to see where it is now.
What are the biggest changes, Brooke, that have happened over the last 8-9 months?
So some of what we worked on was trying to add more heroes to the pool. It was something that we definitely attempted to address, and we did manage to see a lot of improvement there. It just kind of didn't get to the level we thought maybe OG was going to play the map. We also worked on a lot of research improvements to just kind of create a more fluid training process in the hopes that we would be able to gain a lot of performance from those metrics.
Now, Blitz and Purge, we've seen obviously the events unfold already. Blitz, you have experience firsthand of playing against AI, both 1v1 and also in a team setting. What do you expect today?
So I was the first person that played it at TI, right? And I feel like I'm always like the whipping boy. Like I got brought in, I got absolutely destroyed, and that was depressing. And then they had me play the 5-on-5. I was casting it at first, and then they're like, "Would you like to play against it?" I feel like I got trapped again. I was like, "I'll stomp it." I was pretty confident, if I'm honest here. I remember I talked to you guys, right? I was like,
Yeah.
It plays at like max 4K, and I just got wrecked. But I sort of blame my teammates. And now the fact that it was able to beat some teams, that it was able to take Pain. I think it was like a 40-minute game that I casted. I think is really impressive.
How about you, Purge? What's your experience with AI so far?
Well, it's definitely very interesting to play against it. We got to play a match yesterday briefly, and it doesn't really feel like the flashiest thing. It just kind of feels like it's always reacting perfectly to your movements. Like at one point, I tried to prevent you from dying for the 5th time in a lane, Shiver, and every time I would run at the Earthshaker, it would run away, and then I'd be like, okay, he's wasting my time. I'm gonna run back, and then it would follow me, and it just kind of did. We just kind of did this for a while, and it just feels really annoying. It just feels like a step ahead of you. It's not necessarily super outplaying you, but it's always outplaying you, just because they've played so many matches. So it's definitely interesting to play against.
I died 4 times in lane.
Okay,
the rest
I'm
was
sorry.
not on the lane.
Okay, very different.
All right, David, how does AI work? Because we heard Blitz say that he was expecting it to play at 4K level. We have experienced that it's probably a bit higher than that. But how does AI play Dota 2?
Yeah, so it's a little bit different from how humans see it, and we actually have a slide to explain how the OpenAI 5 interprets the game. So humans see this image on the left with the nice picture of the little characters walking around. The AI sees a picture on the right, which is just a giant pile of numbers. And we know that some of these numbers mean a hero's health or some character's position or the items in someone's inventory. But all the AI sees is this giant list of numbers. It doesn't have any idea about the rules of Dota to begin with, what different items are. It just sees these different numbers and has to figure out what they mean.
So how did it get to learn Dota 2 if it can't read?
Yeah, so that's kind of the question that we get a lot, and a lot of people will watch our bot play Dota and be like, well, what's the big deal? I also learned how to play Dota. And I think the difference is that essentially the AI takes a completely different path to get there. It doesn't get to read the tooltips, read about abilities, watch Purge videos to figure out how to play a new hero. It's essentially learning it just by going into the game, trying something, seeing what happens, and even further than that, like let's say you have a new ability you're trying to learn and you know that it stuns. So there are other abilities that stun, you know what that looks like, you know that it's great for you if you're able to stun the enemy hero. What the AI does is they go in there, they cast the ability, and they see that some numbers changed. And they don't know if that's good or bad. Eventually, they might learn that, oh, that hero can't move, and they see that by it's not moving. They have to kind of like recognize that pattern. And so that's kind of like how it builds on itself, and it has to do with all of the game mechanics. So starting out is pretty inefficient, right? It takes us a long time to kind of even get it to last hit, which is a pretty basic mechanic that most people are able to pick up quickly. The upside of that is that this training is all general. So for example, if we were to take out the Dota layer and swap in a different environment, such as the robotic hand, which I think we have a slide for to show, and essentially, you take this environment where you've got the fingertip positions, you've got camera vision and things like that, and you can also translate that into these numbers, which you can then feed into the AI, and then they will attempt to solve that problem too. So it's not that they know how to they don't know that they're playing Dota necessarily, they just know that they are solving a task.
So OpenAI 5 is focused on Dota 2 at the moment, but what you're saying now is that the implications for use outside of Dota 2, that can have some very big impacts on the world.
Yeah, and that's definitely one of the reasons why, for example, we are still working within a limited hero pool, is because there are changes like we could learn a hero. It's not that we think that it can't be done. It's more of that we are looking about making the training process general and making changes that we think will help overall working on AI, not just specific to Dota.
How do we think it's going to impact Dota 2, Kevin?
I mean, there was definitely things that we learned by watching the 1v1s, for example. There was things like, oh, is it worth it to use Fairy Fires just for regen? Or there's other small, intricate, the mango. Like, bring mangoes, eat them instantly, your gold is lost. But you have mana back, which ultimately helps you. And now when we see 1v1s, that's very consistent. It even happens in regular games right now. So there are little advantages that you do get by watching something very different play it from outside the box, basically. It always helps. Same thing happens in pro players. Like if you see a pro player do something new that you've never thought of before, you're willing to trust it because it's different. It's somebody you respect doing it. So there's always going to be similar benefits.
Anything to add to that for the future of Dota 2? Is it going to be coexisting? Are the AI taking over competitive Dota 2?
I don't know about that, but there's a lot that you can learn. Like when you play a high-level game of Dota 2 and you see somebody do something cool, it should intuitively make sense. And the first time I played the 1v1 bot, like Kevin said, I was wondering, I was still like on a meta that was way too far behind. Like I'd buy Tangos and I'd buy Clarities, and I'd realize that every single time I did that, I was playing slower and slower and slower. And so the only way to match it was to copy it. And so you started developing this meta where it was pretty much just salves and mangoes. You didn't even buy any other items because it was less efficient to buy other Wraith Bands or other boots in the Shadow Fiend versus Shadow Fiend matchup. You would just keep varying regen until somebody won or lost. And that's something that's replicated nowadays. Maybe not to like that same extreme because the game progresses past that 1v1 phase, but you're still going for that quick regen, playing as fast as humanly possible.
I have a quick question. So based on the current patch and some of the previous tournaments, we were playing on an older version of the game, but right now we're playing on the current version of the game. How difficult it is when a new patch comes out for the bots to adjust? Do you guys start up from scratch, or do you take like the previous knowledge and then let them readapt?
Yeah, so we take the previous bot and just throw it in the new environment. We don't tell it or anything that anything's changed, but it eventually learns that the numbers don't change in quite the way it thought they would change. And it slowly adapts. It takes a week or a few days after we've done the work to update the code and make the code compatible with the new version.
So how long have they been training on the current patch? Is it like a new patch comes out and you guys instantly put them to work to play? Or is it like maybe a delayed thing?
Typically, it's not instant just because it's work on our part. We really don't know when another patch is going to come out after that, and we don't want to bring them up to speed. I think that they've been training on this patch for at least a few weeks now. And there has been some interesting feedback from our test teams who, when we switched to a new patch, for example, when we switched to 721, the AI started really liking Viper. And so we asked, what were the changes with Viper that they really liked? And they were like, oh, it was no big deal. It was like minor AoE improvements. And then a couple weeks after that, they're like, oh, you can Viper jungle now. It's really, really strong. And so it was kind of like they were talking to us and saying, they catch on pretty quickly. There's definitely some things that they have more trouble, switching over to. But for the most part, yeah.
What are the things they have trouble switching to, like other more complicated heroes or something?
Yeah, it's just typically when abilities change, they have a little bit of trouble with that. That's kind of like why Lich didn't make it past our patches, just because there were significant changes there. So when they have to relearn their playstyle, that becomes a lot harder for them.
Gotcha.
Now today's event is going to be a 3-part event, and we're going to start with part 1. And David, part one is called Competitor. So what did OpenAI do to prepare for today?
So when you have a very high skill Dota 2 bot, you want to see just how good it is. So the natural thing to do is play against some of the very best teams. So we've invited OG, the world champions from TI last year, to push our bots to the limit and see just how good it is. So we'll play a best of 3 against them and see how it goes.
And Brooke, normally when a professional Dota 2 team plays a tournament, there's a little bit of scrimming beforehand, a little bit of practice, and OpenAI did that too.
Yeah. So coming out of TI, we played 3 other semi-pro and pro teams to kind of gauge where we're at, because for the most part, the AI is training just with itself. So it's a little bit hard to see once you put a human team in there if it's going to play the same, if it's going to have a lot of issues with it. So throughout the event, we'll talk about the other teams that we played and also go over how those games went.
Yeah, that will be very exciting to see, and also exciting to see how OG is going to do today, because we will have OG playing on stage against AI. What can we say about OG? OG, obviously, they won TI8. They are back with Anna again after a long hiatus. They have shown that with Anna back, they are also back, qualifying for the major blitz, looking like a very strong team again.
Yeah, it felt like they were. I mean, all respect to ILTW, who they were using as a stand-in, but it felt like they were just waiting for Anna to come back at some point because, this guy just completes their lineup. You can see instantly that everyone's a lot more energized. I mean, these guys won TI off of maybe the most magical run that I've ever seen before. Like, that was the underdog story of underdog stories for them to go through what they had to go through. They forced the Game 5 against LGD. I don't know how strong they are right now. I mean, they were able to go through, which I think is the hardest qualifier, make it to the major. I feel like they're coming into their own. Maybe it's a bad time for OpenAI 5 to play against them because I feel like they're peaking at the right moment. I mean, you saw right there in terms of overall winnings, NoTail completes most of that, but $17 million for Dota, I think that makes them like the second or third highest team in terms of prize pool, so
They've
really good team.
definitely been some of the most storied teams. They had crazy runs during the major system when it first came out. They won the vast majority of those, and winning TI this last year was really the keystone that they needed to be like, we're probably the most winning team of all time. So it's very exciting to have them here.
It is very exciting to have them here, and I believe also we have them ready to take the stage